before we start this conversation, it's interesting to think about the fact that we've talked about the exhibition as a living organism here. And Tino talked a lot about this relationship between the individual and the mode of display. This invention during the modernist time where every piece would need a lot of space around it so that it could be experienced individually. And that this individual experience is actually connected in the history of modernity to the subjective gaze. But there's something that is very interesting when you look at actually how, you know, the biologist Scott Gilbert would say that this notion of individualism is a complete fiction of modern time. And Scott Gilbert, the biologist, would say we've never been individuals. And how? Because we're interlaced, we're connected to our environments, we're codependent, we're in symbiotic relationships all the time. And there's a need for an aesthetic regime of that. And I think that the way the works are grouped here, not as individual works, but really as a sort of chain reaction, and I'm speaking with one of the masters of chain reactions here, really creates something very interesting in that search for an aesthetic of what the non-individualistic exhibition would look like. So we have the luck of welcoming Dozie Kanu, Koo Jeong A, and Peter Fischli for this talk. I think I'm going to start with you, Dozie, for a very Dozie, sorry. For a very simple reason. It's like I never prepared a talk on a chair that was made by one of the artists that I was going to discuss with just after. So that sounds like the perfect way to go. But I wanted more to ask you about those amazing vitrines that you've done in the entrance. And really, if you didn't pay attention while you were putting your bag or your coat, you have to look very carefully to these absolutely beautiful works that are in there. Dozie, you started as a set designer. Yeah. And in this work, I mean, you know, in set design, of course, the notion of functionality for work has a very specific meaning, which is not necessarily the case for an artwork. Do you think that these works are somehow have a functionality? Are they functional, according to you?
Yes. I have to say that I'm super grateful for the curatorial team because I just remember having the idea to make the vitrines and the team asking, so what are you going to put in them, though? Like, what are you going to make for them? And there's a specific part of my practice where I kind of don't link it to design because it comes very much, you know, viscerally. So I collect a lot of found material, and you know, I just hoarded, you know, so many components of different objects over time, and what I do is I basically try to find new ways for them to function in a new way, or function in a way that's almost completely divorced from how they were originally functioning. So I'm super lucky that they trusted me to make these random objects that I ended up making. But yeah, it all stemmed from just the stuff that I had collected around my studio, and then just became a sort of assemblage of these things.
And because in this assemblage, for example, I mean, there is a fan, and maybe you can talk to us a bit about like how this fan is built up, because that was really poetic, actually.
Yeah, well, I had this idea of a fan just because I thought it would be kind of humorous to have it blowing in a closed vitrine. But then I had to figure out how exactly I could sort of transmute my sort of feelings in that current moment into this object. I think a lot of what my practice is based on is like this lack of this sort of African diaspora in the material world. You know, a lot of what's made or what exists as material doesn't really have the perspective of people like myself. And so in a way, I'm trying to like fill this kind of gap that exists. So just the idea of the fan, I really wanted it to feel like me, or feel like, you know, the heritage that I came from, being like an Igbo boy. the first sort of component that compelled me to finish the fan was knowing that I could cover the motor of the fan up with this sort of canvas-like material that I had found on another African sculpture that I had found in Portugal. And so that's sort of how everything culminated. And then you have this drum that's upside down as the base, and then there's this like beautiful red ceramic base that I added together under that, and then it sort of started to come together that way.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
No, it's great. And the only thing that I can say I regret is that you said that, you know, with the fan, because you put this kind of chandelier part together, you can feel the wind differently that comes in our neck.
Yes,
and
yes.
of course, with the vitrine, like I couldn't see that, but I can imagine it, and that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Koo, I wanted to ask you a question. So I guess that many of you had the chance of seeing your pavilion in Venice. Very sadly, I must confess, I cannot smell, technically. It's one sense that I don't have, so I would lie if I said that I completely, fully experienced the pavilion with all those smells. Nonetheless, I was able to experience the work here, and it's really quite extraordinary when one sees how, in front of the Monet, your work seems to start to float, just like, or in front of the Rothko, it seems like it's in a form of depth of emptiness. Did you know before you would before you would install the work, did you know with whom you would be in relationship with which artist?
They had some options, like René Magritte, where he painted the rocks and the cloud, very illustrated with the rock and the cloud in the exhibition. And we talk about it's very direct, but it will be also amusing to see if this painting was the kind of installing somewhere else far away, without seeing the rocks and fogs in the exhibition. But actually, they had another discussion. We could maybe have a Monet and Rothko. Then I found it is there is not only this discussion that has done in the space, because there is also I wanted to change the war with the idea of the choreography of the modern art and the other shows, and so I didn't know, but we kind of talk and finally summarized about the abstraction next to my rocks, my work.
I see. Because, like, in somehow, if you look at the works that we see, that they're made after stones that were scaled up, right?
Yes, I scaled up some rocks that I had in my life. From learning some shapes and substance of kind of minding substance or the physical substance, the social substance from predictive, the critical knowledge. I was very inspired by oriented collections who I was talking to the colleague and friends, etc. So.
I see. No, because what is very beautiful is like it almost looked like actually one of the bigger artwork. I was thinking that it almost looks like a brush stroke that is standing into the void. And that connection, I would never have made it if I had not seen the Monet in the former room and the Rothko in the next one. So that's really one of the ways in which it enlightens the work. I was very interested by, you had this beautiful quote actually where in the little catalog, in the little leaflet, where you say, "I see myself as an emission of radiation." Can you expand on that?
Exhibition also?
Radiation. I mean, I read that it was from you. I see myself as an emission of radiation. I think this is... You didn't say that? But that's beautiful, because then usually we say the best things when we don't realize that we said it, or sometimes they get written without us saying them.
Probably I said in the interview, I heard many interviews thanks to Korean Pavilion, so I don't really catch up what I was talking about. I think I also edited into better words, etc. But actually, I wanted to work more with a measurement, you know. These days, instead of literature or metaphysics, you know, that's how I kind of transit and shifting the idea how to deal with all the idea with a machine and no machine.
Okay, excellent. And so I will go with another quote, and this time I hope it will be to Peter Fischli, and I hope that you will recognize that you said it. In your amazing work, and again, I'm so grateful that we can have that conversation, you compare Snowman to Frankenstein, saying Frankenstein, like Frankenstein monster in his tank or Snow White's in her glass coffin, Snowman is permanently confined to his cooled vitrine. That's the price he pays for his survival. The question I'm going to ask to you is going to be very familiar to my friend Christophe Leclerc, who's an expert on art and technology, because we had worked on this question. But Frankenstein, do you think the problem was to create Frankenstein, or do you think the problem was not taking care of Frankenstein when it was created? And that's a very important question when you think that technological progress is often seen compared to Frankenstein. So how do you address that?
Well, for me, it was like maybe I made this quote that is also it's not exactly my quote. It's the quote of another Frankenstein, of the voice that tells the story about the snowman. That we created this Frankenstein in the studio. We wrote the text for that video, and then we had like this robot voice. So it's that robot voice who is. It's not me, but of course I can't really sneak out of it. I was providing that text, so it was for sure.
We cannot, because you cannot escape from it, because it's not even that it was generated by, you know.
No, because in the video that I did here for this show is like all possible readings or misreadings, or it's the chain reaction of thoughts that you can have when you look at the snowman, and one of it, of course, is Frankenstein, because he's like this artificial kind of being inside. It's not a being, but it's a machine that creates it, and this idea of creating something living by a machine makes this connection. But there are also other things like Schneewittchen, who is also like in this glass vitrine. So they are more than Frankenstein is maybe the dark shadow of the snowman.
The dark shadow of the snowman. Yeah. That's beautiful. And I think that as we had 1 minute left, that actually is absolutely a beautiful way of concluding with this. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.